Hey y'all, welcome to this week's show. We will pick up where we left off last time. And the questioner in Radio Replies, a modernist, an atheist, and agnostic, is questioning the priests, trying to make them justify Catholic teaching in regard to what was in, I guess, the 30s, modern science. And he asked, did God really take a rib from Adam and make a woman therefrom? And they answer, we're bound to believe that Eve was formed from Adam. It is revealed doctrine that God made of one all mankind. That's Acts 17:26. For the man is not of the woman, but the woman of the man. 1 Corinthians 11:8. Nor has reason anything to say the contrary. It is easy for God to make a woman that way as to make man, Adam, from the earth or from nothing. He goes on, besides Adam and Eve, we read only of Cain and Abel. Whom did Cain marry? And they answer, your knowledge is inadequate. Had you read on, you would have seen in the 5th chapter of Genesis that Adam begot Seth, and after that lived on for some 800 years, begetting sons and daughters. Cain very probably married a sister. He could have even married a niece. But that would involve the marriage of a brother and a sister at some stage, or indeed of several brothers and sisters. With the cessation of necessity, such close interrelationship was forbidden, but special conditions naturally prevailed in such special circumstances as the starting of the human race. God exercised a special providence to safeguard the earliest human beings from the evils usually associated with close intermarriage. What does that mean? Well, it's actually not really immoral to marry a cousin. If it were, there wouldn't be many kings or royalty or actually people of noble birth at all in this world. I mean, look at so-called King Charles. He's about as inbred as the kid that played the banjo in Deliverance. He just talks well. Um, but there are health issues. So when they're actually talking of evil in this situation, they're talking about harms, genetic deficiencies of having too close of a bloodline. And after all, sister would not be so closely related to Cain as Eve was to Adam. After all, Eve was made from Adam's rib, or something like. Cain's wife was not made out of his own rib. Whom Cain married precisely is not mentioned, as not being very important. One book cannot give all the names that have occurred in history, and the Bible gives but a summary outline of chief events. Very important to remember. I was actually stumbled across an utterly ridiculous post by someone today. I think it was on Twitter, it could have been Facebook, but they were claiming to have traced the lineage of King Charles, so-called, and I say that because he's not the legitimate king of England. I'm sorry, the kings of Wessex are the House of Wessex are the legitimate kings of England. They're nothing. He and his family are nothing but usurpers to the actual Catholic throne of England. Got there through subterfuge and murder and dirty dealings, and have no legitimate right to the throne. But anyway, this guy decided that he could trace King Charles, so-called, all the way back to Adam. And he claimed to have every generation from Adam and Eve up to King Charles, showing that they are the heirs to like the legitimate, like ultimate, chosen by God to rule the world. Absolute total BS. I would say it in much more stringent terms were I not doing a religious podcast. I'm actually of the House of Wessex. My great-great-great-great-grandfather was Lord Cheshire. I can trace my lineage back to guys like, King Edward, the Confessor, King Richard Lionheart, Arrowwaith, and all those names I really can't pronounce. I know exactly what the lineage is of the royalty of England. And frankly, it's not that impressive. Yeah, the first kings and I mean, we have several saints. The Catholic kings were really great. Uh, the Windsors, they are not legitimate. I mean, they're basically, well, they are truly illegitimate. They're basically bastards and conniving, thoroughly corrupt. Not their reign is not established by God, and they are not the legitimate kings of England, who, by definition, would be Catholic. They are apostates and heretics, and usually inbred morons. Okay. Now, how did the kings of Wessex got there? Well, basically, they were warriors who conquered a nation. Um, did God allow them to conquer a nation? I don't know. But they eventually led the nation to become Catholic. And they have a legitimate right to rule. Could be a few others in that, the Normans, Norman, and maybe even some of the, what? What would you call them? Norwegian, not Norse. That's the word I'm looking for. Some of the Norse lineage. You could say that the Picts and the Welsh and the other original Anglo people, Saxons and everything, would have a legitimate rule. But God did choose one to convert England into a Catholic nation, and then King Henry VIII took it away. Also related to King Henry VIII, I can, in all honesty, and say he was an antichrist. I'm also related to the royals of Ireland. Very much a similar situation. Warrior kings. Carol actually translate to, well, if I was to pronounce it phonetically, it would be Carib Hell. It's more like Carol, or that's means slaughter in ancient Gaelic. They were really fierce warrior kings who became Catholic kings of England. I mean, of Ireland, sorry. Of Ireland, well, parts of the British, well, what's now England, part of Scotland. The cousin was the king of Scotland. That's how the so-called stone of Scone or stone of destiny got from Ireland to Scotland. The mythical stone that was said to have been brought to the Celtic peoples, actually from the Hebrew peoples, is supposed to scream when the legitimate heir is crowned upon it. Okay, very similar in Scotland. In Scotland, of course, the Scots caved to the English. The Scotland the Brave became Scotland the Subservient, and forsook its Catholic religion and became essentially slaves to the English. Um, Lots of interesting personalities in that. I can't really fault anyone, but watch Braveheart. You'll kind of figure out what it was all about. I'm related to royalty of Spain. Very much a similar situation there. Spain remained Catholic though, but it's had its ups and downs. French, yes, I've got French royalty. Lots of French royal blood. So when I talk about the French Revolution and how it was, again, antichrist, I can speak with, a love for France. I love the food. I love the people. Those are my people, just as much as the Irish, just as much as the English. Um, but it's an apostate nation. Uh, More so, I guess I would say, even than the English, because of the terrible violence of the French Revolution and really the fostering and founding of communism. I mean, we think of communism as Karl Marx and Engels. They're basically living in Paris. I mean, they were, the fruits of the French Revolution became the communist revolution of the late 1800s and early 1900s. And it's anti-Christ, it's anti-Catholic, it's anti-Christian, it's atheistic at its core. So now, let's see. Shall we continue with this atheist? Just a couple more questions. He says, do you believe with science that man has been on earth tens of thousands of years, or do you believe the Bible story? And see, this is the thing. Just like that, how shall I be charitable, misguided soul who tried to trace so-called King Charles's lineage to Adam and Eve. People like to take the Bible literally when it's really a summation of events. The genealogies and heritage in there are not to be taken literally. As I've said, okay, I just told you my great, I think it's sixth grade. If I remember back, it's either fifth or sixth great grandfather was Lord Cheshire. You know what? I can't tell you who his son was, and I can't actually tell you who his father was. We get the highlights, you know. We remember like the ones that really stand out. And in the Bible, yeah, there's probably 100 generations left out between these genealogies when they're reading them off. I mean, nobody really has any idea how old the earth is and how many generations have been on it except God Himself. And like it or not, He's never really revealed that. I mean, the Bible talks about the Nephilim, the so-called sons of fallen angels who mixed with humanity, who were giants. Well, I mean, for years that was thought it was just like a myth, right? I mean, people say, well, you got to take the Bible very literally. Well, people said it was a myth because, a giant, a son of an angel with a human. Then the church for quite a while, and I think I don't know if they've ever officially. There's no official doctrine on this, as far as I know. Said that these were giants in not in the physical terms, but in their proclivity to evil. They were just so cruel. They were considered giants of being bad. That's a bit of a stretch, in my opinion, but it makes sense. And then you find things that you just can't explain, like around Cherokee, North Carolina, not far from where I live. There's this giant handprint in the stone, a human hand, like a massive human hand, like 10 feet from pinky to thumb. And the legend is that the giant was walking through and stumbled and leaned and imprinted his hand. I can't explain that. I mean, literally, I cannot explain that. Can you explain that? No one can tell how that imprint in that stone got there. So, as far as I'm concerned, you call me crazy. You think I'm foolish, but the jury's out for me. I mean, are the dragons that are mentioned or the sea serpents in the Bible dinosaurs? Did people find the dinosaur bones and come up with myths and legends, or were there actual human beings living at the same time as the dinosaurs? Nobody actually knows. I mean, the Darwinists will go on in great length about the missing link and how ape became man. They can't find those fossils. They cannot show that missing link. It's never been proved. So, I mean, but they make that as a scientific claim. I'm sitting here as a Catholic saying, I have no idea how old the earth is. I have no idea if man was on earth with dinosaurs. I have no idea if there were once giants walking the face of the earth. We know there were giant animals. Could there have been giant human beings? I have no idea. And I don't need to. Because really that's not of any importance. I mean, what matters is how you live your life and how you die and if you make it to heaven. I don't have to understand everything. I mean, there are mysteries of the faith. I can't explain to you really the Trinity. I have a concept of it, but can I actually explain the nature of the Trinity? No. Can I explain how bread and wine becomes the body and blood of Christ? Absolutely not. But I believe it does because God said it. If God said it, it's the truth. It has to be the truth. Otherwise, He's not God. Otherwise, I have no religion whatsoever. But it's not even something I question. Even when I was a Protestant, I believed it. I didn't understand that Protestantism does not believe it. But yeah, I mean, it's really extreme arrogance and presumption for humans, no matter how smart they are, to think they can figure out the mysteries of the universe and history and nature, and it really is. The human mind's never going to be able to understand the might of God, basically. Maybe able to participate in the nature of God through Jesus Christ, but not to fully understand in an intellectual way Never going to happen. But anyway. So the guy asks, do you believe the earth is tens of thousands of years old, or the Bible story? And they answer, science has nothing very definite to say on that subject, and in any case, the age of the human race cannot be calculated from the Bible. I certainly believe the Bible account in its own proper sense. As far as the account is concerned, man could have been on earth 100,000 years. No one can say exactly how long. Right on. You know, I know what it was like at a certain Southern Baptist University of Virginia. Some people were absolutely, they thought they knew the Earth's no more than 10,000 years old, and we know that by the Bible, right? And another, like Pentecostal University in Virginia, boy, they gave people degrees in trying to figure out stuff like that. And that's not what the Bible's about. It's not meant for that. And man, I mean, you think a gender studies degree is worthless? How about one of those degrees where somebody's tried to figure out the age of the earth through the words of the Bible? Really, sometimes Christian colleges are as absurd as secular. And he continues, you have distinguished between body and soul of man, the soul being a spirit. Yet how can a man belong to the material and the spiritual world at once? They exclude each other, and they answer, a material world cannot be a spiritual world, nor can a spiritual world be a material world, but the two can exist simultaneously, even as in one man's head, we have the material brains and spiritual thoughts. We cannot say that man's material brains so fill a man's head that they leave no room for thought. Even in purely physical things, you can have the material copper and the electrical force occupying the same wire. They are different in order of being. It's very, the modernist materialist, I kind of get that argument, but it's kind of ridiculous, actually. Anyway, the person, finally, he says, is it revealed doctrine that the soul of man is immortal? And they answer, yes. Revelation confirms the conclusion of reason, which I have explained already. The account in Genesis of man's formation proves it. God is immortal and cannot die. He made man in his own image and likeness, but our bodies are nothing like God in appearance and are mortal. Therefore, the real image of God is in our soul, and it resembles God by immortality. Both Old and New Testament insist upon the immortality of the soul. All right, now we will get back to Father Spirago, and we are still talking about the Mass, because it is the most important thing in this world in which we participate. And the topic today is the obligation of hearing Mass, very much misunderstood these days. Every Catholic is bound under pain of mortal sin to hear the whole of one Mass devoutly every Sunday and holy day of obligation. Hard to do. Certainly can't do it when we're sick. Should not do it when we're sick. When you're sick, do not go to Mass and get other people sick. That is really irresponsible, and it's uncharitable. When you can go to Mass, you are obligated to go to Mass on Sunday and every holy day of obligation. Everyone that calls themselves a Christian who does not attend a Catholic Mass is an absolute violation of the commandments of Christ. Therefore, no Protestant church service is valid. It cannot substitute for the Mass because there's no Eucharist. Attending a Protestant church service does not satisfy one's obligation to go to Mass in which the Eucharist is offered. I don't care how devout someone is as a Protestant. I don't care if they go to church 3 times a week. They are disobeying God. Granted, they're probably doing it ignorantly, and God's not going to judge them for that, but His judgment will be different. Let's just put it that way. They will be held accountable for what they know and understand. But as a Catholic, do not ever think that attending a Protestant service or watching a Protestant preacher on television or anything like that can substitute for the Mass. There is no substitute for the Mass. So, he says, those persons who could not go to church without great injury to themselves, or who have some urgent work of mercy to perform, are excused from hearing Mass. Those are dispensed from hearing Mass who by going to church would incur serious personal injury. Thus the sick who cannot go to church are excused. Likewise, those whose health is so delicate that they cannot go without at least the risk of falling ill. Been the case for me and my mother and several people we know since COVID hit. We all got COVID, and you get long COVID, and it keeps coming back. And it's like every Sunday, it's like, am I well enough to go to Mass? Am I so weak that if I go to Mass, I'm going to catch something else? Am I sick enough? Am I running a fever? Could somebody else catch what I have? It's been tough since COVID. It's really tough for people who are on chemotherapy or who have other, immunocompromised conditions. And I really think people need to be more cognizant of that. I've seen so many people drag their very sick kids to Mass, teaching them, you have to go to Mass. Well, that's good. But next to them is going to be an immunocompromised elderly person who's going to drop dead because they were so inconsiderate, put it that way, as to expose that elderly person to their sick kid. Kids are going to have a lot of colds. Kids are going to get the flu. That's part of developing an immune system. Do not take yourself or your sick kid to Mass because you may kill somebody. That's basically like involuntary manslaughter. And I see it every single Sunday. Usually it's the mother, we're going to Mass and you're getting out of bed and you're going right now. I don't care, quit whining and go. The Mass is the most important thing, and it is. But do you not think that that person's not going to be actually held accountable for their, should I call it arrogance, scrupulousness, whatever, that could actually lead to the death of another person? Really. And literally, okay, this is the uncensored Catholic. I'm going to just let it fly here. I have bitten my tongue many times, and frankly, the priest should really let him have it and say, you arrogant, self-righteous person, you cannot come here sick or bring your sick kids here because you're harming other people. I'm biting my tongue. I really feel like really letting fly, okay? I've seen this. I have been to Mass and gotten sick from people around me. I have seen my mother, when she was on chemotherapy, go to Mass and get sick from other people. We have this stupid obligation of shaking hands, which never should have been introduced. All that ridiculous hand sanitizer doesn't do a thing because, we're breathing each other's breath, sitting beside each other in the aisles. Anybody who coughs or sneezes is getting their germs all over you, and no, face masks don't work. If you're sick, stay home. It is a form of extreme selfishness, self-importance, self-righteousness to endanger another person's health. Because either, you're so self-important you can't miss the Mass, or you want to teach your kids a lesson. Get the hell over yourself. Okay, I'll move on now. All right. So, others, again, who live more than 3 miles from church or too great a distance do not have to go to Mass in bad weather. No, this is written in the 1880s, I believe. Of course, 3 miles was much greater distance than now. But again, I live in the mountains of North Carolina, and if I wake up on a Sunday morning, or if it's Saturday afternoon, or a holy day, and we got snow and ice on the roads, I'm not going to Mass. Um, that, again, that's risking your life, and you have a duty to preserve your life, your body, which is the temple of the Holy Spirit. But you also have a duty not to go out and slide on ice on, slick roads and kill somebody else. Trust me, if you die and you arrive at the holy gates and your stupid, arrogant ass ran into somebody and killed them because you were so hell-bent to get to church, what do you think St. Peter's going to say to you at the holy gates? In charity, you should have stayed home. No. Anyway, I could really go on about this for a while because I've seen some of the most irresponsible behavior, especially among those who hold themselves as higher than everybody else. Really a lot of women with large families who will drag their kids out of bed with the flu, running high fevers, and make them go to church. I have seen people driving on icy roads, getting into accidents. I mean, my church is up on a hill. I mean, when there's ice or snow on the road, you can't even get up there. They'll go, man. They'll get that, and they'll come sliding back down and hit another car. They don't give a damn about anybody. I mean, it is an act of Christian charity to consider the consequences your actions may have on another person. Ugh, seriously. I mean, when my mom was in chemotherapy, this was something we had to deal with all the time, all the time. Weighing out the obligation to attend Mass against the really inconsiderate, arrogant, self-righteous, self-important people who would go in there and cough right in your face. All right. So we talked about bad weather. He says a king once observed that on a stormy December morning the church was almost empty, whereas in the evening, though the snow was falling heavily, the theater was crowded. Yes, that's what you have to balance. Alas, he exclaimed, the people are ready enough to make sacrifice for pleasure, but for God they will make none. Working people are also excused if they would lose their employment by leaving their work to hear Mass. Or they may stay away occasionally if by going they have great disagreements to put up with. Great disagreeableness, it's hard to say, to put up with from people they live with, though they should endeavor rather to bring them to a better mind. In other words, okay, so growing up Protestant, it was drilled into me you have to go to church every Sunday, and I wouldn't work on Sunday. Lost a lot of jobs, really in bad financial hardships. Catholic Church actually says if your employer won't let you have Sunday off, you don't have to go to Mass. Not ideal. You should make every effort, but also if a Catholic is married to a non-Catholic or there's something else and it's going to destroy their marriage, they're excused from going to Mass. But make every effort to convert that person and bring him to Mass. I mean, in so many ways, more is expected from us as Catholics. We have days of fasting and obligation, but it's also so logical and reasonable. I mean, we really have no excuse at the end. We can't just say, well, I fell away from the Catholic Church because, whatever. No, the Catholic Church bends over backwards, says, you know what, if you can't make it, we understand. You really actually only have to attend Mass once a year and confession once a year. And I mean, that's, the minimum requirements. But if you intentionally miss Mass, if you can go, if there's no reason you can't go, that's a mortal sin. Because Jesus said, forsake not the gathering yourselves together on the Lord's Day. So there you have it. But, I mean, in some ways it's so much harder to be Catholic than Protestant, but in other ways it's so much easier because the Catholic Church is the only church that has logic and reasonableness and isn't just, artificial doctrines. Anyway. He goes on, one member of a household may remain home to keep the house. Those, again, are excused from attendance at Mass. 1880s, a lot of times the wife would have to stay home to cook, and the rest of the family would go to Mass, and that's a legitimate duty. I mean, they were cooking over fire. It wasn't, they didn't have Arby's or McDonald's. Anyway, Those, again, are excused from attendance at Mass who have to perform works of mercy, such as nursing the sick, taking care of young children, preparing meals for other inmates of the house. Inmates just means people who live in the house. We're not talking prisoners, hopefully. But yeah, that, self-righteous Catholic mother who drives her flu-ridden, 120 fever, puking and coughing kids to Mass and gets everybody in church sick, would be much more pleasing to God if she stayed home and cared for her child. Really, I'm not saying men don't do it too, but you can probably picture the woman in mind that I am referencing. You've all met her 100 times in 1,000 different forms. We have not heard a whole Mass unless we have been present in church during the three principal parts of one and the same Mass. It is a requisite to be present at the three principal parts of the Mass. If one of these is omitted through negligence, the obligation is not fulfilled. Again, through negligence. If you can't do it, you just can't do it. If, for instance, we do not come in before the offertory, or if we leave before communion. As my priest told me, be there for the Our Father, don't leave until after the Eucharist. Get there as soon as you can, get there early if you can, but at least come for that. It does not suffice to hear one Mass from the consecration to the end and another from the commencement to the consecration. What Christ has joined together, let not the Christian put asunder. Father Sparago was clever. He who comes in after the offertory must stay for the whole of another Mass. Believe it or not, yeah. And, of course, now we don't have many churches that offer two Masses in a row, so you just kind of screwed up. Moreover, one must be present inside the church. It will not suffice to sit or stand outside unless the church should be so overcrowded that it is impossible to get inside. Now, of course, during COVID, a lot of us had to, a lot of churches allowed this. It was encouraged by the bishops not to go into, I guess, the sanctuary itself, but to stand anywhere kind of on the periphery where you could hear the Mass and you could participate. And a lot of us still do that when we have health issues. But at this time, of course, they didn't have PA systems and microphones and all that. So you really did need to be inside to participate in Mass. And it was, of course, the traditional Latin Mass, which is a bit different than Novus Ordo. So how potent is the prayer of the assembled multitude, for where two or three are gathered together in Christ's name, there he is in the midst of them. Matthew 18:20. St. John the Almoner, Patriarch of Alexandria, in the 7th century put a stop to the bad habit his flock had of remaining outside during Mass time. In other words, they just gather around the church and not go in. I've never seen that, honestly, but I could, maybe in big cities and up north, I don't know, but we don't get that in the South at least. We actually do go inside. One Sunday, instead of vesting for Mass, he went outside and sat with the people outside the church to their great astonishment. He said, "Where the sheep are, there the shepherd must be. While you stay here, I will do the same. If you go in, I will too." And after this rebuke, no one was seen outside of the church at Mass time. Those only can be said to hear the Mass devoutly who banish from their mind all that may cause them distraction, and who unite their petitions to those of the priest, especially at the three principal parts of the Mass. Okay, so how closely are you paying attention at Mass? It can be difficult, especially if you've got a lot on your mind, you got problems, you got troubles. I really have an issue with parents who let their kids run up and down the aisles and play loudly, or who let their teenagers get on their phones and text and get on Facebook and Twitter and all that crap. It's doing them no good to come to Mass. They need the discipline of sitting there and paying attention, and what does he say? Uniting their petitions to the priest. Otherwise, what are you doing there? You'd actually be better off sitting at home watching on television, really, and you're not fulfilling your obligation of going to Mass. Now, people say, if you don't have crying babies at church, then, you're not really at a Catholic church. I agree. And nobody can fault an infant for crying. But when parents just let their kids run wild And you've seen that, I'm sure you have, running up and down the aisles, annoying people, throwing things at people, and they're like, "Oh, we're Catholic. We love children. You got to put up with it, or you have a problem." No, you have a problem. You need to discipline your children, and you need to teach them reverence. They're in the presence of God. I mean, for Pete's sake, you wouldn't let them act that way in a court, and the judge is just a human being. Yeah, let them act that way in church? No. But the phones, get rid of those phones. Yeah, I'd say it over and over, get rid of those phones. It is permissible to assist at the holy sacrifice of the Mass on Sundays and holy days in any church, but it is desirable to go to one's parish church. The Council of Trent admonishes the faithful to be frequent in their attendance at the parish church, at least on Sundays and the greater festivals. On those days, the priest offers holy sacrifice for all his parishioners, both living and dead, and adapts his sermons to the need of the flock. Furthermore, in the parish church, notices are given out of marriages, of fast days, of ecclesiastical festivals, and ordinances. The faithful ought to at least become acquainted with their parish priest, who is their pastor and spiritual father, in the house of God. There is, however, no law which makes it binding upon Catholics to hear the Mass of their parish church. In other words, you can go to any Catholic church that you want, so long as it's a valid Catholic church. But really should try your best to be part of your parish. To hear Mass on weekdays, if possible, is a highly commendable practice, for it may be the means of gaining the greatest graces. If the holy sacrifices were celebrated in only one place in the world, and offered only by one priest, with what longing would Christian people hasten to that spot? But now there are many priests, and Christ is daily offered up in many places. How much is our lukewarmness and negligence to be deplored, which has thereby arisen? Some people consider the half hour they have to take from work to hear Mass as a loss of time. And let me tell you, weekday Masses really ought to be a half hour, because people do have to work. I have never been in a parish where where the priests actually seem to understand that working people maybe get an hour off for lunch and would like to go to Mass and grab a bite to eat before they go back to work. Usually it's a good 45-minute long Mass, and driving time to and back parking means that most of us can't get to Mass on a weekday. Also true of days of obligation that fall on weekday. The priests just don't seem to understand. But most people really don't even get an hour off for lunch. It's more like 30 minutes. I mean, and you got to eat. You can't eat before Mass. So, I mean, you get off maybe 11:30 noon. You can leave your work. What are you supposed to do? Drive 100 miles an hour to Mass, park, run in. Your entire lunch break's taken, and then drive back, get late for work, and be fired? I mean, come on. Priests need to be a little more accommodating on that, but, let's be honest, most priests have never had a job outside of the church. They went straight from their parents' homes to school to the priesthood. They don't understand. In the 1880s, at least, Father Spirago said that a weekday Mass should be 30 minutes. 30 minutes. I mean, granted, in that, even if you only get 30 minutes for lunch, that's difficult. You can't even do it. But for people who get an hour for lunch, they could at least take advantage of it. And, why can't you also do a 6 p.m. Mass on a weekday? Let somebody get off of work, 5:30. Give the average person a chance just to go to Mass. I mean, and I've known a lot of priests. They weren't exactly doing a lot around 6 o'clock on a weekday, unless there was an evening Mass. So I think you could offer, especially, even if you can't offer more Masses, how about more time for confessional? I mean, you got a church of like 3,000 parishioners, and you have confession for 30 minutes on a Saturday. Nobody's going to confession that needs to go. It's ridiculous. I mean, it goes both ways. We as the parishioners, as the faithful, we have to do our part, but the priests really, I know they work hard, and I know they have to be there for every sick call and somebody's dying and all that, but more confession times and more weekday Mass times that aren't like at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. I mean, they'll do a Mass at 7:30, and the kids are supposed to be at school by 8. It's crazy. You can't do that. Mass at 7:30, you don't get out of there until 8:15, and the kids are late if they're not at school by 8:30 and they haven't had breakfast. I mean, how about times that people can actually go to Mass? And a lot of times those are going to be in the evening. And, you know, Father so-and-so, maybe you ought to uh, stay at church after 5 o'clock. After all, you're not, punching a clock like the rest of us. Just my 2 cents. Anyway, um, so we said some people consider the half hour they take from their time to work to hear a Mass a loss of time. This is, however, not so, for they do their work better and more quickly through having been to Mass. Has not our Lord said, "Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his justice, and all things shall be added unto you"? Matthew 6:33. If, says Coacham, a shower of gold fell from the clouds, thou wouldst surely leave thy work and hasten into the street to gather up the coins. Only a fool would stop indoors. And thou art a fool if thou dost through indifference or negligence submit to hear Mass when a stream of heavenly treasures is poured out from on high. Through neglecting Holy Mass one loses far more than one would gain by a whole week's work. Arrange thy business, therefore, if thou canst, so if as to allow the hearing of Mass daily. And if only that was possible. For 90% of us, I'll say that is not possible. Daily Mass is basically for the retirees. And maybe the priests and bishops ought to think about that. Maybe they should offer, hey, how about 2 Masses on a weekday? You ever been to Mass on a Monday? I mean, church office is usually closed on a Monday. Good luck. Good luck. And if it is impossible for thee to go thyself, give alms to some poor person to hear Mass for thee. Well, that's a good idea. Give somebody a few dollars to go hear Mass for you. You ever done that? I haven't. Be a good thing to do. Unfortunately, I've never encountered a Catholic homeless person. Well, anyway. Interesting concept. Let's just put it that way. 1890s Czechoslovakia, that wouldn't have been an issue. That's when Father Sparago was writing. But you know what you can do? You can ask your guardian angel to go to Mass for you. Absolutely. That's one of your guardian angel's jobs. So. For as is the case with every good work, we may apply to others the merits of hearing Mass without being losers ourselves. For the priest in the canon of the Mass supposes that those who are present with him offer up the holy sacrifice, holy sacrifice, do so for their families and friends as well as for themselves. Do not allow human respect to keep you from serving Christ, for if you are ashamed of him, he will be ashamed of you. Luke 9:26. When King Louis of France was told that the people talked about his habit of hearing one or even more than one Mass daily, he replied, "How careful people are about my time. If I spent twice as long at play or out hunting, they would have not a word to say about it." And that was when the kings of France, yes, my ancestors, were quite devout Catholics and very, very great men. The Blessed Thomas More, another relative of mine, one of my favorite saints, was accustomed to say in connection with hearing the Mass daily that he esteemed it his greatest honor to render that mark of respect to the King of Kings. Now, I should qualify, I say one of my relatives. It seems like he was like a distant cousin, 20 generations back. Don't ask me to prove that. I don't have the genealogy. But if I'm not mistaken, it was either More or Merton, one of those great saints that is somewhere like really distantly related, certainly not a grandfather or an uncle even. But anyway, St. Thomas More, St. Thomas Merton, pray for us, absolutely. Y'all, let's wrap it up there. While going to Mass is the very best thing we can do in this life, we should also be very, very conscientious of the people we are interacting with. We have no right to put another person in danger. God doesn't ask us to do that. He only asks us to do our best. And in some cases, yes, I think the church, the priest should do more. They should do their best to offer more masses that regular working people can attend, and parents and all that. Um, but remember, icy roads, snowstorms, sickness, stay your butt at home. If you have to watch EWTN, watch EWTN. Um, you know, I really, some programs on EWTN, especially like, 20 years ago, I really enjoyed, like Father Groschel and Mother Angelica and all that. But, a lot of times it is dry as dust. It is just almost impossible to watch without falling asleep. And I remember one time I did miss Mass, and I'm sick, and probably a little bit of food poisoning because I remember feeling better in the afternoon. And I went to the grocery store, and wouldn't you know, I walked down the wine aisle, and there's my priest, and he's like, I didn't see you at Mass today. And I said, yeah, I was really sick. I couldn't make it. And I said, but I did watch Mass on EWTN. And he looks at me and says, my son, you have done penance enough. So, I mean, I'm not the only one that can really find EWTN, like, more boring than watching paint dry. But occasionally it is quite good. It's just like those awful G.K. Chesterton reenactments. There's like dramatic reenactments where somebody dresses up like G.K. Chesterton and does like this monologue of like reading from his work. That's never been good. I mean, I'm sorry if you got a degree in theater and you think that's like, nobody likes that. Nobody wants to hear that. No, you're not spreading anything except distaste for what's being presented. Nobody likes it when someone acts like they're Mark Twain and puts on the white suit and everything and talks like he's reading from Tom Sawyer. Well, I don't know, that's more New England than Southern, and I'm Southern myself, I should know better. But no, I mean, those awful G.K. Chesterton presentations. Oh! Or when like Scott Hahn and Jeff Cavins get on there and they whisper. And I read in the book of Maccabees, and isn't that amazing? And you're like, well, it could be if I could hear you, dude. I mean, come on. I got some issues with EWTN, and I've been actually one of those like really devout Catholic women on Twitter, like basically cussed me out because I even criticized EWTN. I think Mother Angelica would slap some of those people upside their head, but that's just my opinion. Anyway, go to Mass if you can. If you can't, don't. But if you can, make every effort to go to Mass. And do talk to your priest and see if you can get some. I mean, if you got this issue like I have where, I mean, I haven't been home a lot because of the hurricane damage. In my little parish, we have confession like 3 days a week. No problem. You can get in there. But most of the winter, I stayed down in Pinehurst. And you're talking literally one of the biggest Catholic churches in North Carolina, 5,000 families, and they've got confession for like 45 minutes on a Saturday. And it's not like the priest is handling multiple parishes. There are actually a couple of priests, and any Mass on the Holy Day of Obligation is going to be like at 8 in the morning. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's like these people have no concept of what normal life is for normal people, and it's not good. It's not good at all. Actually, it's still a church for a retired population when now probably 75% of the population is young families and working people because a lot of military stuff's happened. A lot of people moved in, and they're just like we're still like a resort, retirement, weekend kind of church. Now, but again, I mean, I do know the priest is like constantly going to the hospital, and I mean, the older population, he does have to deal with a lot of people passing away. We really just need one priest to be dedicated to offering weekday masses and confession, because I mean, you go to confession like an hour early, reconciliation, whatever you want to call it. It's like 3:30 on a Saturday, right? and Mass is at 4:30. So presumably you've got like a whole hour, but he doesn't always get there on time, and he leaves like 15 minutes early, so it's not an hour. And you go an hour early, and there are like 30 people already in line for one priest in a church with like 5,000 families. That's not. I mean, look, the collection there on any given Sunday is probably $20,000 to $30,000, and up. This is one of the wealthiest places in the entire state. You got two, sometimes three priests and a deacon. I don't see the excuse. Honestly, I don't see the excuse why we can't have one extra day a week of confession. Why not? I mean, what is the priest doing at 6 o'clock in the evening on, Thursday? He's out playing golf. I mean, sorry, he's out playing golf. Sometimes, maybe not, okay. Maybe somebody's dying and he's had to rush to their hospital bed. But somebody could offer the sacraments to those who need them. Um, on not just an individual basis. Because, yeah, you can always call. I mean, just like, if you're sick or dying, he'll come out. Or if you need to make a special confession, you can make an appointment. There's certainly not a lack of caring. It's just a lack of understanding the needs of regular people. But anyway, just my opinion. Take it for what it is. Grain of salt. I'm not even a member of that parish. It's just where I've had to spend the winter. Things are very different at home up in Linville and Boone and all that. Good, much younger priests that seem to be much more motivated. Maybe that's it. Maybe when a priest at a certain age, he just wants to sit and watch television or something. I don't know. Not my place. Maybe he's doing great things. Maybe he's praying a lot and reading, great spiritual books. Maybe he's writing a great spiritual book. I'm not here to judge, but I do, check the fruit on the vine, as they say. Anyway, y'all, have a great week, and I'll talk to you next time.